An Attempt Towards an International Language. Part 1 by L. Zamenhof. Translated by Henry Phillips Jr. Read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 4. Read by Nicholas James Bridgewater. First problem. My solution of the first problem is as follows. A. I have manipulated the grammar until its forms have reached a simplicity hitherto unheard of, preserving, however, in part, the spirit that pervades the grammars of living tongues, so that its study can be facilitated, and yet that it should in no wise be deprived of clearness, pliability, and exactitude. The entire grammar of my language can be learned perfectly in 1 hour. It can easily be seen how the simplicity of such a grammar will facilitate the study of a language. B. I have created rules for the formation of the words, and by this means I have reduced enormously the quantity of words needful to be learnt, yet without depriving the speech of its richness. On the contrary, I make it still more copious than any of the mother tongues, on account of the ease with which, from any one word, any quantity of others can be formed, so as to express every possible shade of thought. This I do by means of prefixes and suffixes, by whose aid, at will, infinite new words can be created, thus doing away with the necessity of learning each word by itself. For convenience sake, I have given these prefixes and suffixes the signification of independent words, and as such have inserted them in my vocabulary. Example number 1. The prefix mal signifies the reverse of the word to which it is attached. For example, if we know that bona means good, it follows that malbona means bad. So one word instead of two will express the two ideas of goodness and badness. Alta, high; malalta, low. Estimi, to esteem; malestimi, to despise or ill esteem. Dura, hard; maldura, soft. Froida, cold; malfroida, warm, etc., etc. Example number 2. The suffix in indicates the feminine, thus frato, brother; fratino, sister; patro, father; patrino, mother, etc., etc. Example number 3. The suffix il indicates the instrument for an action, thus tranchi, to cut; tranchilo, that which cuts, a knife, etc., etc. I have made a general rule that such words as have already become international, that is, the foreign element, do not undergo any change in my language, only in spelling. So there are many words we do not need to learn, as we already know them. For example, Adam, botany; comedy, disinfect; doctor, emancipate; form, figure; locomotive, monopoly; news, platina; police, telegraph; temperature, theatre; wagon, etc., etc. By means of these rules, and certain inherent properties of my language, its study is extremely simple. With 900 words learned, one has learned it from top to bottom, and these 900 words embrace all the grammatical forms, as well as all suffixes and prefixes. With this small supply of words, anyone, without any especial talent or capacity, and even without any operation of the intellect, by aid of the rules, can create all the other words and phrases that are necessary for daily life. Nay more, these 900 words are so chosen that anyone with even the slightest amount of education can learn them with an extreme facility. So the study of this language, rich, harmonious, comprehensible by the whole world, of which the reason will be shown later on, does not demand, like some other tongues, the devotion of years. Indeed, to learn it thoroughly is but the work of a few days. Second problem. The second problem I have arranged as follows. A. I have introduced a complete disarticulation of ideas into independent words, so that the language comprises, in place of words submitted to grammatical forms, only such as are invariable. Take a book written in this language, and you will find that every word reappears always under the same and only guise, which is exactly that by which it is to be found in the dictionary. All the different grammatical forms, all the mutual relations of words among themselves, are expressed by the union of invariable words. But as such a construction of languages is entirely foreign to European nations, speaking Aryan tongues, translator, and difficult to acquire, I have adapted this disarticulation to accord with their languages, so that anyone, even one who has not read this manual, or even this preface, not at all indispensable for the study of my language, will find no difference in structure between my invention and his own mother tongue. For example, let us take the word fratino. This is really composed of three words: frat, brother; in, feminine; o, that which is or exists. So the literal translation would be that which is a female brother. The root word is frat. O is the termination of substantives in the nominative case, from which arises the word frato. To form the feminine, the suffix in is added to the root and placed before the case ending. The commas, footnotes, in the vocabulary, etc., the translator has used the hyphen to disarticulate the words, believing it less liable to lead to error than the comma. Are used to show the manner in which the word has been put together, thus facilitating its being found in the dictionary. So no trouble is given to the learner as far as the disarticulation of words is concerned. He has no notion that what he calls suffix or affix are really independent words of invariable signification, whether at the beginning, end, or middle of other words; that each of these particles can be employed independently, either as a root or as a grammatical form. From this it results that everything written in the international language can be immediately comprehended in every precise shade of meaning, with or without the aid of a dictionary, not only by those who have no preliminary knowledge of its grammar, but even by those who have never heard of its existence. The translator wrote a letter in this language to a young friend who had previously never seen nor heard of it, enclosing the printed vocabulary. He received an answer in the same tongue, with no other aid. This was a crucial test. For example, suppose I am in England, and although entirely ignorant of the language, yet am obliged to interrogate someone. I write down the following words: Mi ne scias kie mi lasis la bastonon. Ĉu vi ĝin ne vidis? I hand this to him with the International Dictionary and show him the first page, wherein is printed: all that is written in the international tongue can be understood by the aid of the vocabulary. When words are joined together to express a single notion, their component particles are separated by a comma. Thus, fratino, although having but one meaning, is composed of three words, each of which is to be sought for separately. No doubt at first the person addressed, if he has never heard of my invention, will favour me with a broad stare. Then, taking the paper on which I have written, he will institute a hunt in the dictionary with the following results: me, I, ne, not, scias, sci, no, as, the present indicative in verbs, no, kie, where, me, I, lasis, las, leave, is, in the past indicative in verbs, la, the, bastonon, baston, stick, o indicates a substantive, n is the accusative ending, chu is an interrogative particle, vi, you, gene, g, it, n accusative case, ne, not, vidis, vid, to see, is, the past indicative. And so the Englishman will easily comprehend the remark, I don't know where I have left the stick. Have you not seen it? If he wish to answer, I give him an English International Vocabulary, at the beginning of which is printed, if you desire to express anything in the international language, use this dictionary, in which you will look for the words. For the terminations designating the grammatical forms, consult the appendix concerning the grammar. In this supplement, the rules are but of a few lines each, and so the finding of the proper grammatical forms will consume no more time than the hunting up of a word in the dictionary. This matter, apparently so simple, is yet one of prime importance in a practical point of view. It is an evident matter that no one can make himself understood in a foreign language which he has never studied, even with the help of the best dictionary. To use a dictionary, we must know more or less of the language. To find a desired word, we must know its root, yet in speech and writing, almost every word is subject to a grammatical change, after which it has undergone so much variation from its original form that it recalls little or nothing of its pristine condition. Often to roots are joined prefixes and suffixes, changing their appearance and signification, so that without a previous knowledge of the language, none of these words, as they stand, can be found in the dictionary, and if found, will either fail to give an exact rendering of the phrase, or else an erroneous one. Take, for example, the phrase I have already given and put into German. Ich weiß nicht, wo ich den Stock gelassen habe. Haben Sie ihn nicht gesehen? Take the dictionary and hunt up the words. This will be the result of your investigations. I, white, not where, I, story, cane, cold-blooded. Property, to have, she, they, you, not? Here the marks of interrogation stand for grammatical forms not usually to be found in dictionaries. I lay great stress on the fact of the usual vast size of dictionaries of the most common languages, in which after hunting for 2 or 3 words one becomes tired. According to the method of disarticulation that I have introduced, my dictionary is very small and portable. Indeed, in most languages, after having found the word in the dictionary, it becomes a question as to which one of its significations is the correct one to be used in the present instance, and the result is almost determined by chance. Even if one could conceive of a grammar of the utmost simplicity, with an unchangeable signification for each and every word, yet it would certainly be the case that for the person to whom you speak or write, to comprehend your meaning by the aid of a dictionary, he must have a preliminary knowledge of the grammar of the language, and be sufficiently versed in its mode of conveying thought to be able to distinguish the root words from those altered by grammatical forms. What advantage could be derived from such a language would depend upon the number of people conversant with it, and if there were none, its utility would be represented by 0. For example, if you are in a railway carriage, and you want to find out from your neighbour, how long shall we remain at N? It seems unnatural to ask him, in order to comprehend you, that he must learn the grammar of your language. In the international language you can be understood by everyone you meet, not only if it be unfamiliar to him, but even if he had never previously heard of its existence. A book written in it can be read by anyone without the least preliminary preparation, and without even having read any preface to explain how the vocabulary is to be used. Indeed, any person of ordinary education can read the language at first sight without even needing a dictionary. Desiring to write to a Spaniard at Madrid, but not knowing his language, and he being ignorant of yours, can you risk using the international language, whether it be familiar to him or not, or even if it be totally unheard of? You can do so with the certainty that he cannot possibly fail to comprehend you. The complete dictionary of the words necessary for everyday life, thanks to the method of construction of my language, can be comprised on a single sheet of paper, which can be readily slipped into an ordinary envelope, so there is nothing to do but to write your letter in my language and enclose the vocabulary in Spanish, a matter of a few coppers, and the addressee can certainly make out your letter, for you not only send him a dictionary, but clear and complete instructions how to use it. In it will be found sufficient words for usual purposes, and the method of formation of new words will serve as a model for all others that may be desired. Technical and foreign words will not appear in the vocabulary, as they can be easily replaced. B. Thanks to the construction of the language, I therefore can communicate with anyone I choose, the sole inconvenience being that, until the tongue has become generally known, I must await the process of each phrase being analysed. In order to obviate this as much as possible, I have chosen my stock of words, not at hazard, nor by creation, but have selected words already known to the whole world. Thus such words as are employed indifferently by most civilized peoples I have retained without change. If they sound differently in different languages, I have chosen those already common to 2 or 3 of the most important modern European nations, or those that, although they belong only to one language, yet have a diffused currency. Where the sound varies, I have endeavoured to find one that could be recognized by various peoples. Thus, proche may mean differently in several languages. I therefore return to the Latin proximus, which, more or less altered, appears in the modern tongue, and form from it the word proxime, which can surely be comprehended by every person of a liberal education. In other cases I have taken Latin words bodily, as it has been an almost international tongue for a long period. My only exceptions to this rule have been to avoid cacophony, to simply orthography, or to avoid homonyms. I am sure that in corresponding with an European of medium education, ignorant of the international language, I should certainly not only be understood, but that he would find all he needed in the vocabulary with very little trouble. Third problem. I have finished the analysis of the principal properties of my language. I have demonstrated the advantages it presents to those who shall learn it. I have proved that its success in no wise depends upon the interest that society at large may take in it, that it can with justice be called an international language, even if no one cares to hear it spoken of, that in fact it gives to everyone who learns it the possibility of being understood by any stranger of whatever nationality, provided he can read and write. But my language has still another object. To be international does not suffice. It would be universal. It would like to arrive at that point when it could be spoken fluently by the majority of mankind. To reckon upon the support of the public to reach this end would be to erect an edifice upon a vacillating and fantastic basis, for the public, as a rule, likes that which is already in existence, and is slow to lend a hand to establish any new thing. So I cast about to find out some means of attaining my object, independently of the public support. One method is by an universal suffrage. If everyone who reads my book would carefully reflect upon what I have already stated, he could not fail to reach the conclusion that the study of the international language presents incontestable advantages, and would richly reward the very little trouble its acquisition would cost him. Then could I hope that from the very outset my invention would be equipped with a goodly number of adherents. But I prefer to be prepared for the very worst rather than bolster myself up with false hopes and too optimistic anticipations. I suppose that at first but very few persons will find so marked an advantage from the acquisition of this language that they will be willing to waste over it even 1 hour of their time; that the great bulk of my readers will give little or no attention to my work, and not readily make up their minds to enter upon its study. Some may think it will not pay them for their trouble, others may fear to be considered as visionaries, a reproach that in our days most people look on as being a disgrace, and of which, more than anything else, they stand in dread. What shall be done then to encourage this vast mass of indifferent and undecided people, to give them an impetus to study this new language? If our looks could penetrate into the souls of these lukewarm persons, no doubt we should behold the following: that while on general principles there is no one opposed to the introduction of an international language, but on the contrary would be greatly pleased with it, yet each one wants this great change to be effected without the least inconvenience or sacrifice on his part; that all of a sudden he should awaken some fine morning and find the whole wide world speaking this new tongue. Were this so, then the most indifferent would haste to master it, because to be deterred by the slight labour of learning a language which possesses so many excellent qualities and is already known by the vast majority of the world would be but a big piece of childishness. Desirous of offering the public a work already finished, and through which, without the faintest effort or sacrifice on anyone's part, the desired result could be achieved, as above set forth, I have made the following arrangement. The present pamphlet will be sent to all parts of the world, and I only ask that each reader into whose hands it may fall, instead of giving time or money to the furtherance of my project, will take his pen in hand and sign one of the blank forms that will be found at the end of this work. These blanks mean as follows: I, the subscriber, promise to learn the international language invented by Dr. Esperanto, if it be shown that 10 millions of persons have given publicly the same promise. On the reverse, the subscriber shall sign clearly his name and address. If there be any who have objections to urge against the principles of my invention, let them return to me the blank with their views, and the word contrao written over its face. If there be those who are willing to learn the language, independent of others making the same promise, let them return it with the words sen condice, unconditionally, similarly inscribed. This mere act of signing demands no effort, calls for no sacrifice, and binds to nothing in case the undertaking should fail. nothing except to learn the language when 10 millions of others have learnt it. This is very clearly no sacrifice, but only a very simple action, accelerating the fulfillment of the ideal. Every signature gained is a step towards the realization of one of the highest dreams of humanity, without the slightest discomfort on the part of those who make the promise. When the number of those who promise reaches 10 millions, a book will be issued containing all their names and addresses, and the day after its appearance the problem will have been solved. Since the mere signing of this blank form, although tending towards the realization of a sublime ideal, demands of the subscriber no sacrifice, moral or material, and in no way troubles or incommodes him, it is hoped that no refusals shall take place. Indeed, under the circumstances, to refuse would not be simply a mere negligence, it would be to commit a real sin against humanity itself, and an intentional hindrance to the development of this lofty ideal. But I hope that, for the honour of mankind, very few people can be found who, for petty and insufficient reasons, would block the road to an invention so pregnant with fateful results to the entire globe. If objections exist to the mould in which I have cast the international language, I trust that I shall be fully apprised of them. It is the duty of all persons, of all ages, conditions, sexes, to contribute thus towards its success. As the filling up of one of my blanks will take but a few seconds of time, and the expense of a letter to me can be but a mere trifle, for those into whose hands this work may fall, there can be no excuse for a failure to respond to my reasonings, whether by adhesion to my plan or by contradictory arguments. No one can avail himself by the excuse, "I did not know" of its importance. I therefore respectfully ask that editors shall give my ideas the utmost publicity, and that the general public shall know my claims. Such is the general notion of my invention, and I am far from believing that it is so perfect that it cannot be surpassed, amended, or improved. But according to my idea, it is the best form of an international tongue, and I delayed until I had satisfactorily solved the three problems before I presented it to the public judgment. I am but a mortal, and may easily fall into error, even an unpardonable one. I might omit some element of most extreme importance or advantage. I have therefore decided, before publishing a complete dictionary, issuing a newspaper, etc., to submit, for the space of 1 year, my plans to the world at large, in the hope that men of letters would give me their views upon my proposal, sending me in writing their objection, if any, and their suggestions for its amelioration. I shall be very grateful for such action, accepting with gratitude all suggestions, and utilizing such as may not be contradictory to the fundamental principles of my language and the facilities it affords for international relations. After all these suggestions have been pondered over and the last changes made, the language will then take on its permanent and definite form. But even if these changes do not entirely give satisfaction, it must be remembered that the language is not entirely finished, but that while the author no longer will have any say in the matter, an academy yet to be constituted will have plenary powers. I now confide to the kindly disposed public this labour that has cost me so much thought, time, and trouble, in the hope that every one to whom the welfare of humanity is dear will afford to my project every possible assistance. Each one can tell, according to his surroundings, in what way he can be useful. I only must insist on the utmost utility of a full vote being obtained. Let everyone do what he can, and before long we shall have arrived at the ideal so long the vision of the learned, a language common to the whole human race. End of the first part. End of An Attempt Towards an International Language, Part 1, by L. Zamenhof, translated by Henry Phillips Jr. Recording by Nicholas James Bridgewater. Recorded in Oxford, England.